welcome back to Watching Business Morning right here on Channels Television. Now, the country has recorded housing shortage of about 20 million units, and that's supposed to head, of course, even more than that by 2030. It's supposed to get to about 30 million units. So obviously, this is something that should be done. And we've seen a lot of private developers, even seen some adverts of those companies, private developers, here on Channels Television. But now they are saying that the same issue we talked about, FX shortage, and some other harsh macroeconomic realities, they are slowing them down. But let's find out the reality of it now. Joining us from Kenya is Mr. Oladotun Oloyede. He's the founder and chief executive officer of Rollard Properties. He's also a real estate investment expert. He can tell us how to get this money and deal with the issues. So thank you so much for your time this morning, Mr. Oloyede.
Thank you, Rini. Good to be here. Good morning.
Good morning. So tell us how real the harsh realities in the country is affecting those of you in the real estate industry.
Thank you. I think the first place to start is to look at the inflation and what the effect has been on the property market in the last 1 year. And a couple of times people wonder what's the inflation. Inflation is when there's general rise in prices of goods and services, and there's a reduction in the purchasing value of the money. And majorly the causes of this is devaluation and the exchange rate, which is controlling almost everything in the market, and property market is not an exception. And right now, there's the effect of this is in two ways. The first one is on the developers, the private developers like me, and how has that affected our capacity to produce this property, to develop this property. And the second one is on the end users, the customers who buy these houses. How has this affected them? If you look at it from the developer's aspect, the cost of construction has gone up by more than 30% in the last 1 year because the prices of goods and services keep changing almost every day. You stock up today, tomorrow the prices has jumped up. And this has translated to increase in the cost of construction, meaning the landing cost of a house has generally gone up. And if you look at from the developer side, it is a no-brainer. It means the cost of purchasing a home for them has gone way high. And what you can buy with X amount last year, you need 2 times that X amount to be able to buy it this year. And if you look at all this data and all, and we talk about the housing deficit, you mentioned it that it's about 28 million, and that's even if you look at it from quantity basis. If you look at it from qualitative basis, it's way higher than that. If you begin to look at where people live and how people live, then the housing deficit will be higher than that. Our home ownership rate in Nigeria is less than 20% compared to Kenya, Ghana, and South Africa, who are already going around 50 to 70%. And mortgage penetration is less than 2%. So these are damning data, damning figures that if you combine this with the current market reality of the volatile exchange rate and the rising inflation, it just leaves us in a more damning place. But the question to ask is that, is it all doomsday for the property market? I would say no, because there are factors that keep driving the market. Number one is the population growth. Number two is urbanization. And number three is the rising middle class. Because at the end of the day, people need where to live. Whether they are buying or they are renting, you're not going to sleep outside. You need roof over your head. And these drivers keep, make the market still a viable one. So the question is, how do we cope? What are the coping mechanisms and the solution to the problems that we find ourselves right now? If I look at this from a developer's perspective, I would say there is need for urgent intervention. There's need for more developmental funds. Government needs to step in. There's need for collaboration between the private sector and the public sector. Right now, most developers use commercial funding. Abandoned projects. There is need that Nigeria needs to produce 100,000. Nigeria needs to produce 100,000 units of houses every year for the next 10 to 15 years if you're going to bridge the gap. And currently, the production rate is way lesser than that every year. And if you're going to bridge this gap, there's need for major intervention from government in terms of creating developmental funds that developers can access to be able to deliver these houses.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you say intervention, every sector needs intervention at this time. And, well, globally, governments are broke. They're facing a whole lot of, realities. So they were hoping that the private sector will actually bring the cash, the funding for all of this. So, I mean, you are investment experts. Where is the money that we can use to do? Government is broke. Let's start from there, at least in Nigeria. The issue of FX reserve and all others, inflation, it's a challenge. So where can we get the money from? What schemes or what can we do as attractions, to get private sector holds the fund at this time?
Yes. So when I say government intervention, you see, when there is so much uncertainty in the economy, it makes it difficult for investors to come in. So the major thing government needs to do, there's need to create a viable environment, a conducive environment for us to be able to, bring in these funds to be able to do this job. Right now, there's so much uncertainty around the exchange rate policy. Earlier on we talked about how a foreign investor can bring in their money, and it's so difficult to get this money out. This uncertainty, when it comes to our policy not being stable, and we don't currently know what exactly is the exchange rate, what's the government going to do about it, what are they not going to do about it. This uncertainty makes investors very edgy, and it makes them, they're hesitant in committing their funds to the market. So the first thing government needs to do is to create an environment. In Lagos, for instance, you have a situation where government sometimes look like competition rather than regulatory body. So all these things where you don't know.
What do you mean by that? What could you explain that? When you say create environment, just give examples so people can picture it.
So for example, you looked about let's talk about our documentation policy. The cost of getting approval, the process of getting approval is very chaotic. It's not straightforward. These are some of the policies that create uncertainty, where you know that I can't just, for instance, I'm in Kenya right now. And in Kenya, you can easily just get a property brief and go online right from your hotel and have all this thing figured out. You know the role of the government, you know the role of the private sector. It is very clear, it doesn't change. If you bring that to Nigeria, it's not the same thing. I can't just verify a document sitting in my hotel room. If I want to get my building approval, I need a whole lot of know this person, know that person. All these things are things that create uncertainty in the sector, and it needs to be clear. The policy, the processes needs to be clear. We need to know what exactly government is doing about it. You talk about private investors bringing their money and not be able to take it out. All these things need to change for us to be able to attract the right funding we need from the private sector.
All right, so that's where the government comes in, and obviously it's only the government that can control the policy and the environment. Now, we've seen President Bola Tinubu active and, showing signs the market loves him and expects him to be able to normalize things. I know that land, for instance, falls under state government. So do you have like a plan, something like that you think maybe a pronouncement and then the implementation that can soothe the confidence of investors and make them relax and, come into the real estate industry?
Yeah. I'm a big proponent on collaboration, really. I believe strongly that if fellow developers will come together and we'll put our, technical know-how and our resources together, it goes a long way to build the confidence of both the investors and the end users. Because when you see credible people coming together to do a project, because in a time of where you say government is broke, investors are hesitant, then collaboration is the way forward. And this is not a time where I want to do it on my own or they want to do it on their own. We all need to come together as a private practitioner in the sector to, let's take on projects. If you are indeed going to, I see this in a lot in the United Kingdom, where developers will come together to develop a particular location. And that sort of helps the financiers, the investors, to come and also fund those projects. And also sometimes government they don't have a chance. They also have to come into the project because a lot of people have taken the initiative to provide these houses. If we are indeed going to bridge this gap, there's need for collaboration among the private sector. And on the government side, if I may hide this, the mortgage penetration in Nigeria is less than 2%. it will be impossible for government not to be able to fund developers, provide funding for developers, and also are not able to provide funding for the end users. And sometimes, even if the private sector manage to get this investment to build these houses, it will mean nothing if the end users cannot buy the houses. So our mortgage penetration need to get better. If the home ownership rate is going to increase, people will need to be able to access mortgage in a very easy way. And recently, the mortgage has increased. The amount you can access has increased from 15 million naira to 55 million naira, which is a very good one. But again, the process to accessing this fund, also we need to streamline it. There's need to, we have the Federal Mortgage Bank, we have the PMIs. Sometimes the gap between the two is also huge. These are some of the things that also we need to streamline so that people know, okay, I can access this mortgage. There's unification of rate, there's unification of interest rate on this mortgage, and people know, okay, these are the conditions. If I'm able to, at this age, this is the amount I can access. This is how long it's going to take me to pay it back. So all these things need to improve for the property market to get better.
All right, thank you so much. Collaboration between private sector players, a lot of them compete a lot. You developers, there's a lot of competition right there. So you need to break the line of competition and come as collaborators. And on the government side, I mean, mortgage is another issue we're going to discuss on the program sometime in the future. But thank you so much, Mr. Oladotun Oloyede, real estate investment expert, for sharing your views with us this morning.
Thank you.